and we have a meeting after this. So we invited the MDHA to come and talk to us. We have a PowerPoint from them until they arrive. I wanted to let you know that I asked the planning department to share with us the presentation that the consultant made, and that's what you have in your desk. That's the PowerPoint they did, and for the latest stakeholder meeting. So my hope is that you all will take the time to look at the presentation. I know, like, some of you are some of the stakeholders, but for the people that didn't attend the meeting, if you have any questions about this report, to email it to Carrie Logan, and she'll come in the next meeting and answer any questions within reason, I guess, questions that we may have about the report. In the meantime, being that we're waiting, does anybody want to make any comments about? I think you were at the meeting, right? Would you like to give us some? No? Okay, I don't want to put you on the spot. All right. How about from the mayor's office? You all have any comments, news? Did you win the lottery? No, nothing? Okay. You're working hard. Yes, I know you're working hard. All right. Well, I guess we'll wait for MDHA. So let me turn this mic off while we wait. For making yourself available to the committee. The reason, I had a question for him, and he agreed to come and address it, and that was the question you see at the bottom of the PowerPoint is basically, what does MDHA do when it sells the properties that they have control over to put some kind of a deed restriction or some kind of a limit, so whoever buys the property is required to build a percentage that is workforce or affordable. And we also want to take the opportunity that he came here to learn about the great work MDHA does. They have just case. They do this great stuff, so I just thought that in the context of talking affordable housing would be a good opportunity to learn from what they do. Can I have a volunteer to move the slides for him over here?
I can do it.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, you sit over here.
Yeah, you can, sure.
Is there a clicker?
I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Okay, good. Okay.
So you can focus.
The floor is yours, Mr. Harrison. Thank you.
Hi. Can you hear me okay? I can. Should I put a mic?
Your mic is on.
You said you're going to send me $5?
Your mic is on, Mr. Harrison. Over there to your left, that one.
Thank you. Hi, Jim Harbison. So first, it's my 2-year anniversary. I'm reminded that one of the challenges and the role I have and MDHA has is maintaining trust. Having us all work together and trust each other. I'm working to get to know all of you. Please get to know us. I can say in my 2 years, we've worked hard at being transparent and open. Maybe not 100% successfully, but the intent's pure. We'll be here. If I can't make it, I'll have a rep here every time you meet. If you got a question, call me. Please call me if you hear someone say we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, because There seems to be a legacy here. I don't know why it's there. We left, those of you over there at Enterprise Center, about 3 hours ago, and I got a team that's worked really hard with others to get a grant for Jobs Plus. And what we're about on my watch, I think, is not just about bricks and mortar and improving affordable housing, providing opportunity. We sort of talked about that last night, I guess, with Cheatham. So I'm pleased to announce, not my work, I just signed the paperwork, but Martha O'Brien, Metro staff, thank you, you helped us. We just received $2.7 million for jobs training. HUD awarded it to us about 3 hours ago, and I think this is the kind of stuff that we can all do together, and I look forward to working on it. So good news. And one other, besides the jobs training, I know I've reached many of you, have had it out in the press, the HOME program for Nashville in 2015, which is the only source of funds the federal government gives us to build new affordable housing. We received $1.7 million last year. Those funds were cut in the budget markups over the last 3 months down to where we received $160,000. Would have been just about enough to keep the program income alive. I'm pleased to say that working hard, Mr. Cooper, others, the home funds will be fully restored for Nashville, and the federal budget will carry $950 million in home funds, which means we'll get over a little bit more than last year, 1.7 million, 1.71. So that's another piece of good news I have for you.
Right.
And I share that, and that's what I hope to do here, is we just have a good conversation. I kind of tell you where you are, I answer your questions. So the direct question I had was, what do we do with MDHA properties when we dispose of them? Well, not all of them have affordable restrictions. So I'll point to our mission. It is not only for affordable housing, we also do economic development. So some of our commercial properties, some of those developed under our role as a city developer. Rolling Mill Hill is the one that's probably the focus here. Did you ask me about a specific property, or just a general question?
Well, I understood that recently there were 2 RFPs for 2 properties that were being sold, and they were going to be used for residential. And so the question was if there was language on that. Obviously, I personally would like to see language to the effect that it will dedicate a percentage to affordable workforce housing, mostly if it's in the core downtown.
I hear you. Please understand our mission is to create affordable housing. And I'll talk about, so I've got that, we've got a slide on that, and I'll come to it. So the question, I've got a general discussion of where we're going with MDHA and what we do on disposal of properties, because we acquire properties, we sell properties, we give away properties, we take the money from sold properties, we use it for loan closings, we manage properties, obviously, with 6,500 units of affordable housing. So we do all those functions. Sometimes they have affordable restrictions, frankly. Most times they do. Sometimes they do not. And I'll go through those as we come up. So next slide. That's our mission. That's a question. I put up the intent. This is from our board strategic planning. Our number one goal, and the one we're working on hardest, is preserve and grow affordable housing. This gets to our land management activities, which is what I'm really going to talk about, and a subset onto the RFPs we have out. I'm not going to talk about acquisition too much, but in terms of preserving affordable housing, we worked really hard in the last year to buy.
I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison, sorry to interrupt you. So those properties that the RFPs went out, did they have restrictions on?
Some of them did, some did not, and I'll get to those. I'm going to address those.
Oh, okay, sorry.
About 2 slides away.
All right, okay, thank you, sorry about that.
So this is just the background, but on preserving and growing, we purchased property, and the one we've had our major purchase recently was Communication Workers of America 1 and 2, 253 units there next to Casey. Okay, so you've got that. Now, those of you that came to our breakfast, lunch, and dinner session back in September, some of this will be familiar. Next slide. You can't understand what we're doing without understanding rental assistance demonstration, and we are going to be out of the public housing business in 2 years. It was passed 2 years ago. We did our best to let everybody know. We had public meetings, it was in the paper. We coordinated closely with the Metro government. They agreed with us. What it means is that we will have single fee, simple ownership of all the public housing sites and be able to redevelop them. Now, key to that is redevelop is going to be private equity. Private equity means we are going to borrow money, quite a bit of it. We have to. The Envision Casey plan, as an example, is $600 million. We will seek help where we can from Metro, but your funds are restricted. I can only use Metro funds for infrastructure. I can't use to build things. So I have to borrow money, And as all of you that have borrowed money to buy a house or do home equity, you have to have cash to close, you have to have cash to develop. So some of the properties we sell generate cash that we use later for affordable housing. That's a long slide. It's in your packet if you have it. I'll be glad to come back and give you a long soliloquy on RAD, but that is our major strategic opportunity and the one that we're pursuing the most, and it flavors everything we do. Next slide. This is what we're doing specifically. We're doing RAD differently. If you Google RAD, you're going to find a lot of negative voltage out there in our country. There are people who think it's a bad program. It does deliver to local use these properties to dispose of and to be used as they see fit. For us, uniquely, among other people, we are not relocating tenants. Our whole goal is to have tenants move from the site they're on to a new unit. We're not going to use outside developers. We are the development arm. We'll self-develop. That will save development fees that we can recapitalize. We are not going to outsource to private property management and drop our labor force. Those are our big changes. The main thing I just point out, we're going to finance smart, and we're up on a big learning curve. We received a 9% low-income housing tax credit last year. We have set-asides over the next 2 years we'll pursue. We're going to do low-income housing tax credits with bonds. We'll also do FHA insured. Our 10th and Jefferson property that we just broke ground on is a 221D4 FHA insured loan, 40-year non-recourse, 4.0 rate. It's a great loan, but we're going to be smart about those. And when we close loans, we have to have cash, and we are a cash-poor organization. And we are going to build Vision Casey. That is our number one priority for construction and building while we plan the other sites. Next slide. So that leads to, within that context, I mean, we could talk a long time about what we do in development, urban development, community development. We could talk a long time about our voucher programs for housing and rental assistance. But in our RAD program, where we have most of our land, we're changing, and we're supporting that in a program we've had for quite some time. We kind of reorganized this when I got here, our affordable housing, property, and land management. It has these major tenets. We are buying land for affordable housing. We bought CWA. That set us back. That was an $11 million acquisition. We were able to get some generous loans, but we still had to put some money out for closing. We transfer and sell land to support affordable housing. Some we transfer at no cost. Some we transfer with deed restrictions. Some we sell with deed restrictions. And some we do not sell with restrictions. Those are to facilitate the sale and to further the master plans that are in place for the development of those properties. We develop land for affordable housing. Many of you have been to our groundbreakings. My goal is to have more. We've got 2 underway. Our next one, which I'll talk about at the end, we hope is going to be at the Randy Rogers training site at Cheatham. We own and operate and manage affordable housing, about 6,500 units. We do maintenance assistance and administer down payments. That's our land management and housing properties. That's the big stuff. Let's talk about the first bullet, which addresses Fabian's question, acquire land. I know I've been a long way around the barn, but I want to set the context. Next slide. So on transferring land in the last 12 months, we've had no-cost land transfers through RFPs, and I wasn't sure which RFPs you were referring to, so 2 of those are still out. Woodbine Community Organization, should the Barnes vote tomorrow, approve, will receive those properties. They all have deed restrictions for affordable housing. They are required to do affordable housing. They get those at no cost. That's a zero cost to them. It allows them to build at low cost and keep the rents down. New Level CDC gets 1800 Hyman Street. Again, no cost, deed restriction. Monticello at Trinity Lane, we've transferred 17 lots. I didn't have time to get the breakout which group got what, but all those lots were transferred this year at no cost to Habitat for Humanity, Be a Helping Hand, Woodbine, sorry I misspelled Woodbine there, community organization. So those lots all transferred, all by RFP, and I didn't know which RFPs you were talking about, so all by RFP. There's one RFP pending, that's the top one. The top 2 are pending approval. That's under the Barnes RFP, which we have a part, and the Barnes Trust writes their part. And those all have deed restrictions. Okay, next slide. Pending RFPs, and I think this is what you're talking about. On Rolling Mill Hill, there's a long history there. We could have I can come back and give you a whole history of it. I wasn't able to get all the facts because a lot of it was before my watch. But when I came aboard, we have an approved master plan. We updated that master plan starting the fall of 2014 with stakeholder and public meetings. And in March of 2015, it was reapproved. On that, there are remaining 5 sites. None of them are designated for affordable housing, not one. So in the planning, there was no direct designation for affordable housing. It was for best use at the time. 3 of those two of those we have set aside and intend to do mixed income development on. That seems to be, as near as I can tell, what the public desires. It seems to be the right way to do it. We also have to worry about, to a degree, the affirmatively furthering fair housing laws. We cannot create concentrations of poverty. So in this case, on our count there, we're at 30% of very low-income housing already. And in our judgment, the RFP that we submitted for the originally two parcels did not include affordable housing. Why? When we went to the public in the stakeholder meetings, it was not identified as a requirement. What does master plan look like overall for the community there? We're already at 30%. We get much higher than that, we start worrying about concentrations of poverty. So we have to keep it mixed income, which means we have to keep higher income levels in there. The two parcels in question, if you're familiar with Rolling Mill Hill, one is the big parking lot right below Poundwood Social. The other one's the one right across the street. Both of those have long-term parking contracts and parking restrictions. Frankly, as we sorted through the legal work, we couldn't figure out how to develop them and get what we wanted to do out of affordable housing. We would increase the concentration of poverty. We couldn't really figure out how to untangle the long-term parking relationships that had been brokered, again, before my watch, with a Sirion and to, I'm sorry, it's escaped me, I think it's CBRE Ellis, but the property manager for the trolley barns. We couldn't unwind them. So we said, okay, let's let the private market figure this out. So we put them out with as little restrictions as possible. And our intent and desire was that we would close with Lifeway. And for those of you in the previous administration, we went through a long negotiation process with Lifeway. They desired the corner parcel. We had a $12.7 million sales agreement. Everything was Jake as far as we're concerned, and we needed that cash to help us finance Envision Casey as we're negotiating with lenders, and we're just starting those negotiations. But we are, I know I'm segueing a little bit, we're looking at 2017 right now. In 2017, we're looking to identify that location in Casey where we can get the most units down and finance the next step of construction. We're talking to a variety of lenders, but all those lenders are going to require cash at closing, and we have about $4 million left. And we can't really get money from you. We can get infrastructure money, but I can't use the closed loans. So it seemed to us a good confluence. We had restrictions on density of poverty. The master plan did not require affordable housing on these sites. They look like great developable sites at the peak of a market where we could generate cash that we could use for affordable housing at our primary mission in our analysis of developing Envision Casey. So we put those two out without any affordable restrictions. They have none. Then the Lifeway parcel, Lifeway chose to go a different direction pretty much at the last minute. For us, we held that parcel for about 6 months in that sales agreement, a purchase sales agreement. And we thought, okay, now what do we do? Well, it seemed likely that with the parking restrictions, the best way to make all of them work was just add it to the present RFP. Again, no requirement for affordable housing. The previous two of Lifeway did not have affordable housing component, and we put it in there. So presently, we have 3 parcels, and they are lucrative parcels, I would think, for a developer. And we hope to generate a whole lot of cash. I hope we get premium top dollar. And we want cash quickly, because we need to take that cash, have in the bank, and be able to have a serious discussion with lenders how we're going to leverage the land that we'll receive in the summer 2016 and 2017 to take on debt. And we're going to have good debt service coverage ratios. We're going to have good loan to value is going to be obvious. It's going to be great loan to value. But we're going to have to generate those cash dollars to build out. So we're taking a business approach here to preserve taxpayer dollars. We don't have to build this stuff anymore. But we've got to have this cash. So for these 3 parcels, and they are the only ones out there like this, we have no restrictions on affordability. They are in the RFP for development. We received proposals on or about the 15th of January, as I recall. It's in mid-January. It reflects the master plan. It helps alleviate the parking restrictions. It prevents us from getting into a box potentially with the FHEO at HUD on concentration of poverty, and we thought it was a wise way to approach. Now, are we done at Rolling Mill Hill? No. We have 2 more sites, depending on these pan out. Now, they may voluntarily choose to put a bunch of affordable housing here. Maybe they will. But if that doesn't happen, we have 2 more sites, one just below Ramen Lofts and one behind SWH, where their new construction is, that we can develop for on the order of 150 to 200 affordable units. And that's our next play. So we see how this one pans out. Within the construct of the master plan, we look at the next two. We self-develop, probably chase low-income housing tax credits, and we go for mixed-income development there. I don't think we can put pure low-income housing there because, again, we won't have the numbers sufficient to prevent our ratios from getting out of whack and having a concentration of poverty. I think that's what you were asking me, but I apologize. As I read the email, I couldn't discern exactly which side it is. Is this the right one?
You were right on the, yeah, perfect.
So I've got one more. Does that answer your question?
Well, I have a follow-up question, but you know. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, next slide. Okay, our future RFP, we have one other out there that is a parcel that we intend to put out, again, generally to make cash, but also to sort of get us out of a box we're in where we're in an area that we're just not the right people. So there are two parcels up in 5 Points. We redid the 5 Points master plan over a period of about 10 months in 2014. It came to council for approval in March of 2015. It requires these two sites to be used for parking. These sites were bought with federal monies, and I didn't have time to look it up, but I'm pretty sure they're home monies. We're going to probably put those out sometime in the next 60 to 90 days for sale with a parking restriction, not an affordable housing restriction. Why? Because that's what the master plan says. That's what the community desired in our many meetings. Keep it as parking. I suspect someone will pick these up and use them for parking. Right now, they're free parking. But we have liability issues, we have restraints, and again, we're positioning ourselves to have enough cash to be able to be serious about financing using our land value in about 18 months. So that one is not on the street yet, but I anticipate you'll probably hear about it or see it in the next 60 to 90 days. Okay, next slide. Okay, that's it on, I want to talk about something specific that we're doing that I think Sharon's aware of, and whoever came to the public meeting last night, is because it'll be in front of council. It's already been in front of council once, but I'm going to explain where we are in Cheatham Place. But let me answer any question you may have on our land banking management program.
Does anyone have any questions? Council Lady Allen.
Thank you. On the property at Rolling Mill Hill that it's in the RFP, would that have a public parking component requirement to it so that Asurian and the people that park there for the trolley barns could still have a place to park?
The requirement in the RFP is they have to honor the parking agreements, and I can't remember the length of time for Asurian, but it's long. So the answer is yes.
And that covers all the businesses that are in the trolley barns?
All the ones that are in the current lease agreements, and that's everything that's in trolley barns and Asurian.
Okay, thank you.
But I don't remember the exact length of time, but it's not a day, it's years.
Any other question? So my question is this. So you're concerned about concentration of poverty, and you're saying you don't want to go above 30%. Why couldn't you put a deed restriction for 30% on the property and keep it going over the concentration limit?
Well, mainly because of the size of the parcels. So if you go 30% at each of those, I guess we could have, in a way. I mean, frankly, I didn't think that one through. We probably could have done that in retrospect. Our concern, frankly, was untangling the parking agreements. They were really, really restrictive, and we're trying to get best value for property. And also, we believe those other two sites are going to help us get our values and concentration numbers correct. And actually, there's no hard and fast. From the FHEO, we've talked to Zach over in the HUD office. There's no hard and fast number here. So some people have been in trouble for as low as 10% and then increasing it. And this is a site that had no very low-income housing originally. And so we're a little concerned about even the 30%. And we're kind of hoping to bring it down in the 20s.
Well, our concern in the Southeast, and I think I'm speaking for my peers in the council from that area, that we are seeing a concentration of poverty and increase, and that's one of the reasons that motivated us to push for this inclusionary zoning legislation, to try to deal with the problem at the sources, the gentrification, the displacement of people from downtown and from the core, the UZO, going into places where, I mean, I know I'm telling you something, you know, so my hope is that we can keep as much as possible the stock of affordable housing downtown so people can live and work downtown without having to go all the way to Antioch and drive back and forth. And over there, the services, well, anyway, I don't want to get into a preaching thing, but I just want to understand why the urgency of keeping the affordability downtown. And so as, you know, you are an agency you have your own board, so we don't get to tell you what to do, but I hope that you guys will keep that in mind as much as possible.
Just please, our goal is affordable housing, and we're doing this in a way we think will work for everybody. So as an example, envision Casey. We're going to decentralize poverty there. We're going to do it in reverse of what everybody else has been doing. And it's, frankly, I think it's a little risky, but I'm optimistic it's going to work. Everyone at Casey is going to get a new home. And we're going to make the pitch to other people like us that have good incomes. Come live there. Your next door neighbor makes $10,000. Don't sweat it. It's safe. There's a good school there. And we've got to work all that out. And we'd like to extend that planning process. We're not sure how yet. We're thinking through the process. Extend that same mindset and planning to the other very large sites we have that need help and need to be redone. Edge Hill. I think people will live in Edge Hill with people next door to them that are of low income. And we can add 1,500, maybe 2,000 units in. And I'm not talking, Bell Mead incomes. I'm talking what you're talking about, workforce people. That median income person. They're the ones that seem to need it the most. I think the opportunity is great to do just what you described at Edge Hill, at Sudicum Napier, at Cheatham, at Cumberland View. We don't have plans there yet. So our next step is to get through the master planning process with the communities and determine how best to do that. But the approach we're taking is mixed income. But it's mixed income without tenant relocation. So when you look at those buzzwords in those first slides and the RAD approach from the DHA vision, it's minimize tenant disruption, and that's a buzzword. What it means is don't mess with them. They've got fragile families and don't need to have those family systems and their networks, upset too much. But you got to get them out because you got to build. So we're going to do our best to move, as in Casey, from Casey to Casey, and then convince other people to come live there side by side with people of low income. I think we can do this, but it's going to take us some years. And our next big step really is going to be Kirkpatrick. So
I have a question from Councilman Sledge. I think it's a question.
Yeah, it is. If you go past the Rolling Mill Hill, let's say you sell all those properties that you mentioned, Rolling Mill Hill and the 5 Points, do you envision putting all of that toward Casey, or do you, one, and then two, do you see going through another RFP process to add on when you're starting your negotiations with the banks? I guess the simpler way to say that is, does it stop with those properties, or do you envision needing to sell off a couple more in order to strengthen your position with the loan? I
don't know. I hate to just be honest with you. It's on the map. We have a master plan figure of $600 million. We've had Walker and Dunlap and Wells Fargo do debt service capacity on loan to value. It's larger than $600 million. We do not yet have the contracts in hand, so I don't want to get really geeky here, but we get 20-year contracts from the federal government. We don't have them yet. So from those federal contracts, we then run our operating expenses against the gross revenue. We know what the NOI is. We can figure out what our debt service coverage is. If it's really good, we need less cash because we're more confident that we can do it. And the other thing will depend on how we finance it. We continue to receive 9% low-income housing tax credits, which are on the value of about $10 million in a grant. That also decreases our need for cash. We just know we need a pretty good amount, and we're going to build the strategic reserve, and it will be controlled by my board. It won't be a Jim Harbison decision. And then as we come into financing packages, we draw down from it. The nice thing about Casey, maybe making lemonade out of lemons, is we are not going to be vouchering out tenants. So I'm not going to scrape the whole thing at once and rebuild it. So I don't need a big number all at once. Our next phase we're targeting is about 300 units, and that is a rough order of magnitude estimate. 300 units to come down. Rebuild about 600. And why? Because we have a turnover of about 80 units a year there. We think we're building 70 now. We think we can get 90 some odd up in Kirkpatrick. And if we offered voluntary vouchers, just canvassing the population, there might be 20 or 30 people that take them. So we're going to need to finance a 600-unit development. We're not going to need all the $600 million to finance. So we won't. I think the money we'll get off Rolling Mill Hill will finance that next step. We'll see what's left. And then as we develop master plans elsewhere, we can make reasoned determinations of what our priorities are. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I've got one more.
Sure.
it's somewhat tied to that. I know that you're saying these sales are in part because you need to work within those thresholds on concentration of poverty. As we're going through the inclusionary housing reports we're getting from the consultants, we've been talking a lot about the UZO and talking about sort of the urban core, where I'm trying to see how we can make sure that our objectives are working hand in hand, whereas we might get into a situation where we think, okay, we want to have a concentration of inclusionary housing, which would include perhaps below market housing. And if we want to work with you on it, how does that mission work together to make sure we stay below your thresholds so that we don't hit concentrations of poverty as defined by what you're working with?
Great question. Let me just ask this. I'd like to come and take 15 or 20 minutes of every one of these meetings and just cover topics.
5 minutes.
Well, I've been longer than that here, but I don't think there's any, our analysis, our look, no matter how much you give away in incentives, you're not going to get down to the very low income level. You just can't get a developer to get there. So what I'd like to talk about next time, if the chairman would allow, one of the things we've achieved in 2 years, we have a reauthorization of a thing called our Fair Cloth Amendment, another big buzzword. It means we have about 1,100 subsidy allocations for very low-income housing available, but they have to be built in a certain way. We're not quite sure how to take advantage of that tool either, because some of these are all things like the 2.7 million a day that we're just having success. We had to apply. You have to go to DC. You got to run the drill. Now we're getting success. So we had the Fair Cloth Amendment reauthorized in 2015. We received approval for RAD in 2015. We've got this Jobs Plus grant. Choice Neighborhoods, we hope, is going to be in 2016. So we got to figure out how to use that, but I'd like to come back and explain what that means. That gets to your question, and I think should be included in it. But we really haven't been asked about it yet, because I think they're focused more on zoning things than, say, a master plan. But one of the tools in our kit bag is expanding and providing another 1,100 very low-income allocations. The challenge is, where do you put them without creating concentration of poverty? So I would say initially, don't worry about creating concentration of policy, because I don't think there's anything you can do in zoning that's going to get a developer to build apartments somebody's going to pay $50 a month. I don't think you can get there on the numbers. But maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. That's when you have to start worrying about concentration of poverty. If we're able to find a way to exploit the Fair Cloth Amendment, we have to figure out how we include those in the fabric, I think probably of our 433 acres, without getting more poverty. So now, if we're never able to build those, it's a moot question. But we couldn't even consider it until we got that reauthorization. So I'm basically taking it for the record. I don't really have a good answer for you yet. Okay.
So we have a follow-up meeting soon, and so I'm going to have to cut it short, but Councilman Mendez had a question, and Councilman Member Hurt had another question.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. My questions are really around what you described as gathering the funds for Envision Casey, and this might be call for one of those geeky answers you referred to, which is fine if that's the case. I'm trying to understand, so there's the Rutledge Hill redevelopment district, where the couple properties that you got the RFP out now for, and there's presumably some sort of debt that is outstanding with the redevelopment district.
MDHA has no debt in those properties. Is that what you mean?
I guess on the...
We did purchase one. One of those we purchased with federal funds. The Lifeway parcel was purchased with federal funds some years ago, but we have no debt on those. MDHA has no lien on any of those properties. We have no debt.
I probably asked a bad question. I guess I meant for any outstanding tax increment financing in the district. Is there outstanding debt? There must be.
Yes. I'm not really to talk of that in detail, but yes.
Yeah.
There definitely is. I just don't know the amounts. I didn't compare. I need to take that for the record.
That's fine. The mechanism that I'm trying to wrap my brain around is the idea of using the proceeds from the sale of property in one redevelopment district for building improvements in another redevelopment district. It just intuitively, and I could be dead wrong on this, but intuitively it would seem like the proceeds from property that's owned as part of one redevelopment district, that the proceeds would relate to that district and not get crossed over into another district.
Well, that's not the read that I've received from our attorneys. It starts with MDHA being a separate incorporated entity under the state charter. That's what allows me to run parking garages and dialysis clinics and other things we're taking on. That's a separate discussion, but we're taking on business lines to generate cash to fund gaps in the federal funding and provide social services. So we're a private landowner of those parcels. We sell them, it's a cash deal, we hope, just like we would, I know when we were doing Lifeway in the purchase agreement, it was a straight cash deal. They were going to write us a check, we're going to take the check, it goes into our strategic reserve, and it becomes unrestricted funds for use any way we saw fit. And we're very careful about the color and flavor of money because we do have federally restricted funds we have to use in certain ways, and we watch those lanes very carefully. But I was really clear to get a legal opinion. If we had completed the Lifeway sale as a model, but if we'd done that, they were unrestricted funds. We could use them in any way possible, within the incorporated entity. So I don't think there's any restriction.
And then the related question is, and this is just me trying to understand how separate the redevelopment districts are. So I think Rutledge Hill redevelopment district might have a TIF limit of 60 million or something like that, whatever the amount is.
I got that on the record. I've got that. I just don't have it with me. So
can that limit be used only for properties inside Rutledge Hill redevelopment?
yes.
Okay.
And we can't go beyond it without council authority. Council sets those limits. So
So not the limit. Can that $60 million cap be used for tax increment financing of a project outside of Rutledge Hill?
no, it's within the geographic district.
Thank you.
Councilor Eddy,
So I have a couple of comments and then a question. And I want to say that I'm really, really happy to see that Be a Helping Hand and New Level CDC are more involved in getting some more activity. And I really would, because I know in your first statement you had that in the RFPs you want to maximize the neighborhood potential. And I want you to be intentional about making sure that that thing happens. Because, too many times historically there have been projects in one community and organizations outside of those communities come in and do those projects and not communicate with those organizations within that community. So I would hope that you would definitely maximize the neighborhood potential by utilizing those organizations. We can even go to the point of maybe even making some legislation where at least 20% of any type of project like that will make sure that it is given to organizations within their community.
I certainly intend, I completely share it. Again, our main focus is RAD. Our model is Envision Casey. We have a Casey Action Group, 42 members.
Right.
And we work with them very closely to have them involved in all the decisions.
Well, I'm just saying that if any project, that comes into a community, projects that may come into a community, to utilize and work within the community before organizations outside of that community come in and do those things. Okay.
I'm probably going to display my ignorance here. What outside entities have come in? We have contractors. I have contractors that bid on an open bid job and won the low bid.
Right. Well, similar. The neighborhood stabilization program was here before you actually came, but with as much opportunity that project provided, little of it actually was given and worked within that North Nashville community when the majority of it came because of the numbers, the statistics and demographics in that community.
Before my watch, I can't answer. I would just say, since I've been there, we've partnered with Martha O'Brien, and the results of Martha O'Brien South Community Center work. The dialysis clinic's a local entity that we're partnered with. I believe everyone we partnered with, except for those that were hard bid contracts, like a general contractor. So Levant and Poor is building 10th and Jefferson. They're from
Right.
Memphis, I think.
Right.
But they won the bid, and it's an open bid process. So other than that, I think we're doing okay, but if we're not, I'm more than happy to find a way to make sure we do better.
Well, like I said, intentional and deliberate is really important to me, and, we can talk anytime. The question I did have is the Jobs Plus grant that you got, what kind of jobs training would be available, and are you all going to work with other organizations to make sure that this program is implemented appropriately? And I just wanted to also mention, the Jefferson Street redevelopment plan. I'm so glad we've got some projects that are coming through now, but it's been a long time coming.
Well, thank you. And the 10th and Jefferson that we pursued it took us about 18 months. And as you know, we talked about this last night, Randy Rogers, it's going to take us about 18 months to get going there, assuming we get support here. But it takes that long. It took us that long to get 10th and Jefferson going. We've got Mr. Wooten and some others coming in and got some great projects. And I think Jefferson Street, we're getting some tractions, and we hope we can support that. I think on evidence, we've done, B- B job there. I won't say don't have room for improvement. On Jobs Plus, I'd have to go back to the announcement, but for our application, we had to identify up front the nonprofit that we would work with. We chose Martha O'Brien. One, they had great credentials, they had a great grant writer, and they had a series of great programs. I'll have to take the record the exact specifics, but they were mentioned today in the press release. They include education, they include job coaching, they include rent forgiveness to take money into escrow. So one of the principal parts of this, as people grow their income and they're in public housing, typically what's supposed to happen is as 30% of their income, they're supposed to pay more rent. They won't have to do that. And that difference will go into an escrow account that's available to them to buy a home. So those are the major components, but it's mainly job training and job partnering, mentoring, coaching, and it's all run on, and Martha O'Brien will do all that. And they went in with us and listed those programs and had to list their experience and success in those programs with a pretty heavy layer of statistics. So we'll be partnered with them. They'll be the executor of those programs. We'll run the money, and we'll run the escrow and the rent forgiveness program. And that's about all I can remember off the top of my head. I was more focused on trying to do this.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. And I do hope that you will come next week. I said 5 minutes, but you can speak more than 5 minutes. I'll give you 6 minutes. And I hope you'll come back.
Chairman, my time's your time. So
I'll finish. I hope you come back and finish the presentation. Unfortunately, we have I let this meeting go too long, and we're stepping on another meeting that's coming up. Council Lady Gilmore, you have a question?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Mine will actually be quick, and if he needs to send them via email, I just want to ask. One question was, as it relates to the Rolling Mill Hills, explain to me how that'll affect the property if a private developer purchases it, because it was my understanding last year, I think we did some legislation that would erase the taxes that were tied to paying with that because it was affordable. Do you understand what we went to we went to the state so that MDHA wouldn't have to pay the taxes on it.
Okay. So you're talking about the pilot program. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So I really, if I understand the question, there's two. One, what are the land use restrictions on any development of Rolling Mill Hill? It is in the Rutledge Redevelopment District, which the council approved, and all the land use restrictions there are enforced by the Design Review Committee of MDHA that meets every other Tuesday. So whoever builds there can't break the rules. They've got to bring in the design, they've got to be approved, they've got to meet the standards of that redevelopment district, which again, we vetted in a stakeholder group in public meetings in 2014 and had reapproved in March of 2015.
Okay.
On the low-income housing tax credit pilot, we will have our very first one in front of you soon. I think it's January, okay? In low-income housing tax credits, the Attorney General and the property assessors have changed the way they assess the value of the tax credit. Previously, it was not taxed for property taxes. Now it's required to be taxed by property taxes. What that means is for many of these programs where they're developing, they accounted on not having that value taxed. And once you tax it for many of them, it put them upside down. So what we proposed in the pilot, and the council kindly approved, is that we would be your analytic agent. So we're not going to approve any pilot. We don't do that. That's your role.
Okay,
And
so would they be
we'll come to you with
able
an
to,
analysis and tell you what money should be forgiven and why to allow the project to go forward.
so could the private developers that purchase the Rolling Mill Hill project, would they be able to benefit from that, or would they not? That's my question.
Only if they apply to the Tennessee Housing Development Agency and receive a low-income housing tax credit and build affordable housing. But
They would.
but they could do that. So if someone wins and has the best approach per the RFP, and they choose to build affordable housing and then pursue a low-income housing tax credit, they could then come to MDHA, apply for a payment in lieu of taxes, which we would analyze, which we then present to you for approval.
Okay, and then my second question is, you may have to send it to me. I was listening, I'm still not clear about, okay, you were saying with the Rolling Mill Hills that you don't want it to go past 30% as it relates to poverty. So my question was, how much will it be in Casey, even though it's going to be mixed rate? That's the piece, that's my question. Thank you.
It's going to be higher right now, and as I said, there's no fixed number. The case we're making to HUD and the Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity Office is that right now you have a big concentration of poverty. Our intent's to add 1,500 units, and that's the most we can squeeze in on the property in a reasonable way and have good green space and walking space and a nice place to live. And the only other way to decentralize poverty would be to move people out, and we don't think that's wise. So HUD has accepted that argument, and as long as HUD and their FHEO office is comfortable, we frankly are comfortable. But the ratio will be 1,500, so it's going to be more like 40% or so. So it's going to be higher. And we're going to see how it goes. But our very first one will probably be a mixed income along those ratios to make sure that, crawl, walk, run. So when we do Kirkpatrick Park, we'll test the market, and hopefully we'll get market rate, and we'll get, affordable workforce, and very low as well. Answer your question? Okay, thanks.
Thank you all for coming. A reminder that we got a copy of the PowerPoint from the consultant that did the study for planning. I hope that you guys will take it with you, take a look at it, and send your questions to Carrie Logan. She's going to come and compete with Mr. Harbison next meeting to see who speaks. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate what you do. Thank you all for coming, and meeting is adjourned.